All right, we're gonna start in about a minute here. So I see more and more people get on. So welcome, and we'll just wait for another minute to let everyone get on. Okay, I think it's time. So as people start hopping onto Zoom and on YouTube Live, we'll kickstart this event. So welcome everyone to Tuesday Talks. My name is Jungrak and I'm with Initial View. Tuesday Talks에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 저는 Initial View 대표하는 김정록입니다. Today, I'm excited to kickstart this event, which is really exciting to me, as we'll be talking about the city of Boston. And I had the privilege of living in Boston for a few years, and I can attest it is truly a vibrant and exciting city. And I'm excited to be here with 4 wonderful admissions officers from Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern, and Tufts University. As always, please ask your questions at any point of the webinar. There is a Q&A box that you can just click on and ask your questions. And if you're joining us from YouTube, there's also a chat box there. So we will try our best to answer your questions at the end of this time, at the end of this webinar. But if we don't get to all your questions, we will surely try our best to then email you with our answers, and our admissions officers will be responding to that at a later time. So 오늘 프레젠테이션은 이제 영어로 하지만 우리가 이제 파워포인트는 한국어로 다 번역되어 있고요. 그리고 언제든지 우리 사장관들에게 문의할 거 있으시면 한국말도 괜찮아요. 그때 이제 채트박스에다가 이제 물어보시면 우리가 번역해서 사장관들에게 드리겠습니다. Well, so I just want to thank everyone for logging on today. I know that there was a lot competing for your time, but we're very privileged to be here with wonderful admissions officers who are up very early in the morning in Boston to come here to talk to you, especially for those of you in Korea. So thank you for joining us. And without further ado, I'll let our admissions officers introduce themselves. So starting off with David from Boston College.
Great. Thank you, Jungrak. Thank you, and good morning, everyone from Massachusetts. At the same time, good evening to you all in Korea. Thank you again for tuning into this event. The benefits of Boston and its private universities, part of the Tuesday Talk series that's brought to you by our friends at Initial View. My name is David Weber. I work in the Office of Undergraduate Admission at Boston College. And on behalf of my colleagues and co-presenters, who I will just briefly introduce you, Samantha Fifield from Boston University.
Hello.
Brendan Graham from Northeastern University.
Hello.
And Bridget Moore from Tufts University.
Hello.
We wish you and your family a very safe and healthy spring and start to summer. And speaking of spring and summer, the traditional spring and summer college search experiences like college fairs and traveling to our universities to visit and to tour have, at least for the time being, been temporarily replaced by webinars like this and by virtual content. We're still really happy that we can engage with you in this conversation and in this format. So this has been a real joy for us to be able to do this. I know I can speak on behalf of everyone on this panel that we hope sooner than later You'll be able to travel to the United States and visit our universities. And of course, we can't wait to travel back to Korea and to visit you at your schools as well. And everyone on this panel has spent quite a bit of time in Korea building relationships with your schools, building relationships with your families. And it really is one of the great pleasures in the work that we do. Our discussion today is not your typical university information session. By the session title, of course, you know and recognize that the four institutions here are located in Boston, Massachusetts. And yes, we're going to talk to you a little bit about each one of our schools, but we want to spend more time focusing on Boston and what makes Boston arguably the greatest college city in the world. With nearly 200,000 university students in our relatively small city, there is nowhere else quite like it. Many students are enrolled in universities that carry international acclaim, and you know the names of those schools. There are also a lot of students in Boston that are enrolled at colleges and universities that perhaps you're not as familiar with as well. Boston can be an incredible home for any type of student. Boston can be an incredible home for any type of person as well. And you'll find throughout our discussion that each one of our four schools provides incredible educational, intellectual, and social experiences. But each university is also distinctly different, from our neighborhood that we reside in to our traditions, from our academic structure to our institutional identity. In Boston, each university has its own feel, its own vibe, its own culture. But the beauty of your college search is that you get to find and determine where your home will be for 4 years of university study. And I hope in a conversation like this evening, we help spark that exploration for you. Finally, in this conversation, we look forward to answering your questions and talking more about the holistic application review process. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the cancellation of standardized testing in pretty much everywhere across the world, many universities have been restructuring and reshaping their application policies, particularly when it comes to testing policies. So how do we plan to go about the application review? What do we value? And how can valuable opportunities like working with Initial View impact your application? We're going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can within this session. The legendary American writer and storyteller Mark Twain once wrote that in New York, they ask you, how much are you worth? In Philadelphia, who are your parents? In Boston, they ask, how much do you know? And this is America's college town. And we're looking forward to sharing more with you about Boston in the minutes ahead. I'm going to turn it over to Samantha Fifield from Boston University to start that part of our conversation. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Again, my name is Samantha Fifield and I am from Boston University. I'm actually an alum of the university. I graduated in 2009 with a degree in international relations and did my minor in Mandarin Chinese. And I have been at the university as an assistant director for about the past 8 years. So I'm very happy to be here today to be able to talk to all of you and to give you just a little bit of history about our wonderful city of Boston. So this is just a very, very brief intro, probably just things that you've learned in your own history courses about US history. So founded in 1630 by colonists from England, it quickly became the commercial, financial, political, and educational center of the New England region, which was the entire United States at the time. It is a historical city. It's probably most well known for being the epicenter of the American Revolutionary War and for the Boston Tea Party, where we threw, tons and tons of tea into the Charles River. It looks much cleaner now, I promise, but that was definitely an important period in Boston's history. Boston continues to lead the US today in education, medicine, and technology. Notably, biotech is something that we specialize in. So those are definitely areas where you're going to get a great education in addition to many other things. So the next slide. So my colleague David already talked about America's college town. So why are we referred to as America's college town? Because we are home to over 60 colleges and universities. You know, we're not the biggest city in the US, but we pack in a lot of really, really great higher education. 7 of those 60 colleges and universities are ranked in the top 40 of best colleges and universities by US News and World Report. So it's, you know, a huge amount of really, really great schools. About 25% of Boston's population is made up of college students from all around the world, which is really, really great. We definitely have a very collaborative and academic environment with opportunities to pursue pretty much any field that you would really be interested in studying, whatever it is that you want to do, be it, you know, psychology, nursing, bioengineering, whatever it is, you'll find a school, you'll find many schools probably that are specialists in those areas. So Boston's a great place to come. It's also a really international city. We consistently rank in the top 3 of best cities for international students, just because we do have so many international students coming. I read a statistic recently that 14% of students in Massachusetts are international students, which is one of the biggest in the country. So we're a really, really great place for international students to come. And we did have over 60,000 international students studying in Boston just last year. So there's a lot going on. We're a great place, not just for higher education, but also for international students. Next slide. Perfect. Okay, so I thought I would make this section a little bit lighter since you're not able to come all the way to campus. I just wanted to show you some really pretty pictures of the things that you can do and or eat in the city. So you can definitely get your fill of Asian food. There's some great Korean restaurants in the city as well. Little Italy, there's pasta and cannolis. And of course, Boston is famous for our seafood. Our lobster is pretty famous, so you definitely have to try that when you come. Next slide. Museums, there's a ton of museums, and with your BU ID and with most university IDs in the city, you can get access to all of these great museums for, you know, a discount or even free. A lot of them for free, so that's really cool too. The aquarium, love the Boston Aquarium. If you're interested in just taking a break from your studies and want to see some cute penguins waddling around, sea turtles, pretty fish, this is the aquarium for you. The Boston Common, this is the biggest park in the city. It's a beautiful place to go any season of the year. They even have swan boats where you can hop on and bring bread with you. You can throw it to the swans, which is kind of cool. It's a beautiful place to go for a walk and just hang out with your friends too. So I recommend it. The Freedom Trail, if you're a history buff or you just want to learn a little bit more about the city of Boston while you're here, there's a really cool trail that you can walk that basically just kind of takes you through time. And you can learn all about the city of Boston and America's history on that trail. So when you find a good day in the summer or the fall, that's definitely something to check out. Music and entertainment. So this on the left-hand side, this is Boston Calling, which is a huge music festival that happens in Boston every year, most years. And then we have Symphony Hall as well. If you're into that more classical music, that kind of thing. I'm really hoping that you'll be able to still have these opportunities sooner rather than later to go out and, you know, experience music in this way, because we have some great venues for you when things open back up. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention our sports teams. We are big into sports here in the city of Boston. Obviously, you might have heard of the Patriots, the Bruins, the Red Sox, the Celtics, and our soccer teams, which are killing it. So yeah, I think definitely you're going to want to check out a game of any kind while you're here, because they're just really super fun and I totally encourage it. So that is sports. One last slide, I think. Yep. So the great thing is that all of these things are very easily accessible in the city. Public transportation, you can get anywhere you need to in the city in practically no time at all. A lot of us have campuses that are really close to public transportation, and so you can get from one side of the city to the other in, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes, and it's all super, super accessible. So I think that's one of the great things about Boston is it's definitely a city, but it's a very walkable city. Public transportation here is great, and everything that you possibly need is right at your fingertips. So it's a really, really great city to be a student. Okay, I'll pass it off to, who am I passing it off to? Brendan.
Me, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. My name is Brendan Graham. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Northeastern University. I've been there for about the last 5 years. And I'm going to share some information with you all about some research and professional opportunities in Boston. So first off, in terms of research, there are a lot of ways that students can get involved in research here at our colleges and universities. Many universities have, their own labs, research facilities, but it's also an option for them to study and do research at some of the medical facilities that other universities run or through private organizations in the city. So there are a lot of different ways that they can apply that skill set that they're learning and develop research potential if they want to go on to graduate school or a doctoral degree. A lot of times students will figure out what faculty members are working on at their universities and just ask to get involved. That's often the first step of really getting in the lab and developing that research potential. I'd also want to mention that research isn't limited to the natural sciences. So there are research opportunities outside of STEM fields. You can do research in just about every area. Okay, and go on to the next slide. And then some information about professional opportunities in the city of Boston. As Sam said, Boston is a thriving center for education, finance, technology, and healthcare, especially biotech. What that means for you as a student studying in the city of Boston is that there's going to be great opportunities for you to get involved and get some professional experience in these areas if that's something that you want to do as part of your undergraduate education. And it's not limited to these fields, but these are just the things that Boston excels at particularly. How students do this can vary. There are some work opportunities for students to work on campus through programs like work study, but then there are more targeted programs where students can use their academic qualifications through programs like curriculum practical training, CPT, or optional practical training, OPT. These two programs essentially just allow you to work and be paid for the work that you're doing while you're an undergraduate student. Curriculum practical training allows you to work while you're a student for a year, and then optional practical training allows you to work after you graduate for a year. And if your major has a STEM designation, you can get an extension for an additional 2 years on top of that. So plenty of opportunities to get some professional experience that you're then able to take out into the world with you after you graduate. And now that we've talked a little bit more about some of the benefits of Boston, we're going to go ahead and talk share some information rather about our individual universities. So I'm going to pass it off first to David Weber, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about Boston College.
Great, thank you, Brendan. We're each going to spend about 2, maybe 3 minutes talking about our schools. So we're going to do this quickly and then get to your questions as well. But with regards to Boston College is a medium-sized research university that has been built and established upon the study of the liberal arts. When we're talking about our hopes for students at Boston College, it is a balance between what we call student formation and then, of course, career preparation as well. Outcomes are extremely important to us at Boston College, but we also want students to understand who the world needs them to be and how can they get to be that particular person. Go to the next slide, please, Jungwar. At Boston College, our 9,300 students engage in 4 undergraduate divisions of study: arts and science, management, education with human development, and nursing. And most students are in arts and sciences. Management, education, nursing are what we call our pre-professional schools, steering you more towards a particular industry. But all of our students study within our core curriculum. So every student at Boston College will work within this university core. And here's where some of the really interesting courses take place. A course like Performing Politics, which is taught by a theater professor and a political science professor simultaneously, where you are exploring campaigns and protest movements and how the marginalized communities oftentimes turn to art, or those seeking political gain turn to art to get their point across. A class like Living on the Water, which is a case study of Venice and Boston, coastal cities that are rich in tradition and heritage and culture and art, but also looking at the implications of climate change and how rising sea levels are impacting our cities. Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, theology and science simultaneously being taught within this class, looking at the responsibilities that we as human beings have in the way that we use this new technology in artificial intelligence. So when you come to Boston College, of course, we're working towards preparing you for industry, preparing you for careers, and the on-campus recruitment and the access to internships is incredible. But at the same time, we want you to develop meaningful opinions about our world. Next slide, John Rock. And then it's a community. It's an incredible community, residential, where students have a lot of fun. They have a lot of fun within sports, within arts and music and performance, and then within service as well. The service organizations at Boston College are some of the most popular ways to get involved on campus, to meet friends, and to engage with the community around you. So again, Boston College, a medium-sized research university that stems from liberal arts study, but it's residential, and everyone at Boston College is working towards being who the world needs them to be. Sam Fifield at BU, let's hear a little bit more about Boston University.
All right, let's do it. So Boston University, we are a large private liberal arts and research institution. Again, we host quite a few undergraduate students. We're a large school, so just under 16,000 actually from all 50 US states and territories and over 100 countries all around the world. So we're very, very proud of our international students. They actually make up about 24% of our incoming freshman class. So almost 1 in 4 students at BU is going to be an international student. So you'll have a lot of company. We're also a proud member of the Association of American Universities, the AAU, which is a group of top prestigious research universities in the US and Canada. So we're very proud to be members of the AAU. Next slide. So what can we offer you? A little bit more just about BU in general. I think one of our specialties is definitely academic flexibility. We actually offer over 200 different majors and minors at the university across 10 undergraduate schools and colleges. And the great thing is we don't put up any barriers to any of those programs. So that means that you can major and minor across schools and colleges. You can do a double major. You could study something like communication and psychology, even those are 2 different schools and colleges at BU. You can change your mind if you decide, you thought you wanted business and then you want to study film, you can change schools and colleges. So it's very, very flexible. We want you to be able to pursue all of your interests, all of your passions. Again, the international community I mentioned already, small class sizes. We do have an average class size of just 27 students. So that's pretty small for a large university. You'll still have some large lectures. That's unavoidable with those introductory courses especially, but generally speaking, your classes are going to be pretty small. We have some world-renowned faculty, leaders in their field, Pulitzer Prize winners, Nobel Prize winners, Guggenheim Fellows, that kind of level of faculty who work with undergraduate students, which is really great. Again, a small student to faculty ratio of just 10 to 1, again, quite small for a big school. We're also very proud to be able to offer 4 years of guaranteed housing. That's not something that a lot of, especially, urban universities are able to offer, but we are able to give that to you. If you need a place to stay for 4 years, we got you covered. And then we also have just a beautiful campus with state-of-the-art teaching facilities. Just our local area where we're located in the city of Boston, we happen to have the Charles River that lines one side of our campus. So it's just a genuinely beautiful place to be a student in the city. So that's just a little bit more about BU. There's so much more I could talk to you about, but if you're interested in learning more, jump on our website, come check us out online. But for now, I will pass it on to the next person to talk about their school. Brendan.
Thanks, Sam. So a little bit about Northeastern University. Northeastern is a larger research university with a traditional college campus. We're located in the heart of Boston, and we really emphasize experiential learning and global experiences. So what that means is we want to have our students get out into the world and really apply the things that they're doing in the classroom and put those to the test. We're really fortunate to be situated where we are in the city of Boston. We're about a 10-15 minute train ride from downtown. We have a traditional college campus space. You can see a little bit of it there in the picture. And the city itself is, extremely accessible from where we are. You can walk and experience a number of different neighborhoods really easily. You can go ahead to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about some of the academic options available to students. So we have a really broad range of majors that students can choose from. We also have combined major programs, which essentially allow students to study 2 different topics in a more interdisciplinary way than they might through, a double major or a major and minor combination. There's a lot of flexibility too. So while you can apply directly to a major, you can also switch your major between colleges and programs really easily, and it's very flexible. We have students doing this often well into their second year of study. We do have some smaller, student to faculty ratios as well in 14:1, perhaps, a little bit more personalization than you might expect from a school that's as large as Northeastern. You can go ahead to the next slide too. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the experiential learning opportunities at Northeastern. So the one that we're most famous for is the co-op program. Co-op is essentially an opportunity for you to work full-time for a period of 6 months while you're studying at Northeastern. During that period of time, you won't take any classes, you don't pay tuition to Northeastern, you're really just focusing on professional development. And we've been doing this program for about 100 years. We work with around 3,000 employers around the world. So we have a really well-developed network in finding students opportunities that are going to be of direct interest to them. It's something that I think really allows students to get a sense for whether or not what they're doing in the classroom does translate effectively into something that they want to be doing long term. So it's a really valuable program in giving students a better sense of not only what the professional qualification in the real world looks like, but also their personal interest in it. And it helps them build out that network as well and really establish themselves within the field before they even graduate. Northeastern also is a very diverse student body. We have international students coming from all 50 states and 126 different countries. So it's a great place to learn in a community with a lot of students who are going to be bringing their own backgrounds and perspectives to the table. And with that, I'm going to pass it off and let Bridget tell you a little bit more about Tufts.
All right, we made it to the last school. So I'm Bridget, I'm with Tufts University, which out of this group is actually the smallest university represented today. About 5,500 students, undergraduate students across 3 undergraduate schools. So we are a medium-sized research university. Our 3 undergraduate schools are listed here. That's the SMFA at Tufts, which is a BFA Fine Arts program, the School of Engineering, and then we also have a School of Arts and Sciences. Say if you were trying to sum up what students at Tufts were like, they're intellectually curious, they're kind, they're civically engaged, and they're globally minded. Go to the next slide. Just list a couple of the different things that we offer at Tufts. At Tufts, average class size is about 22. We have the Tisch College for Civic Life. That's where that civic engagement comes from. The experimental college allows students to go beyond the bounds of a normal academic framework for classes and really explore different and interesting topics. We are a tier 1 research university, which means we're ranked at the top for quality and quantity of research. So that'll be a little bit smaller, the same amount of research and engagement that is happening. 60% of our undergraduates are doing research during their undergraduate time. And there's a variety of paid opportunities on campus, international, for students to do that. As Brendan mentioned earlier, that's across all disciplines. That's true for all schools. It's not just in certain areas. All academic areas are doing research. Next slide. So we're about 11% non-US passport holders with a total of about 21% international background. So multiple passports, educated abroad, things like that. There's over 300 clubs and organizations, and there's also a lot of support going on. So I listed the International Center, which helps with visas, all sorts of different job compliance, things like that. But it's important to remember that when you send off, you're off to going to the US, that there's academic support and emotional and well-being support and all these different pieces that continue to be part and really are hallmark of the US experience, where students are being really supported through their entire journey. We also have a wonderful career center. About 95% of our students are typically employed within 6 months or in grad school within 6 months. And we have a platform called Handshake that there's over 100,000 Tufts alums that students can connect to and utilize for mentoring. And then the school actually just also invested in InterStride, which is a job platform just for international students that helps international students find employers that are willing to or able to hire non-US citizens, employers abroad, things like that. So some really great opportunities to connect with all the different things you're having on campus. And then as we kind of move into the Q&A, we're shifting a little more to the admission side. So I just mentioned a couple things here. But I know, Boston is definitely something that unites us, all the institutions here, but also unites us is our holistic review of admission. So David touched on that briefly, and holistic really just means the whole picture, right? So in the US, many schools prescribe to the idea that it's not a test score and a GPA that makes a student compelling or going to have a great experience on a particular campus. It's how they want to get involved. It's the academic areas they're interested in. It's the ways they're going to engage with a particular personality of a campus. All those things are really important. And those are all things that we look at in the admission process. So I think it's important to remember that none of the schools here have hard minimums. So there's not a score that's going to get you in, and there's not a score that's going to keep you out. It's much more than this. And I just use these numbers for example. Last year, Tufts had 23,000 applications for a freshman class of about 1,500, 1,550. 80% of those students had the right range in GPA and the right range in test scores. Don't make me do math this early in the morning here. 80% of 23,000 does not equal 1,500 students, right? All the schools here are lucky enough to have a really lovely application pool of really qualified students. And what's helping us make those decisions about who's coming is essays, is recommendations, is the supplements, all these additional pieces that gives us a sense of who's going to be happy at BU and who's going to be happy at Northeastern and who's going to be happy at BC or Tufts, because they're all different places with different personalities. And that's where we're going to talk a little bit more as we move into Q&A.
Great, thank you so much. This has been a packed 30 minutes of wonderful information. I'm gonna put this up here. These are everyone's email addresses. So please feel free to follow up with us. And we're gonna go straight into the Q&A session right now. So if you haven't already, go ahead and start posting up your questions. So I'll start with one that someone asked, and that's in regards to a lot of the research opportunities that were mentioned by each and every one of your institutions. Given that there are lots of opportunities for research, and given that you're all in Boston, is there opportunities for collaboration across institutions and also with other maybe private labs that might not be attached to the university?
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Trying to jump in. But to answer your question, yeah, there are definitely opportunities for students to participate in research across universities and within private laboratory spaces in Boston. We have students who, they may be studying something that's related to, a healthcare discipline, and they might be doing research at a medical facility that's part of another university. In some instances, they may even be, working at a lab that's part of another university as well. And there's certainly opportunities for students to be working at lab spaces and doing research in the city. There's a lot going on here in that area. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that the depth that students do this in may vary. So research might be something that a student is doing for 10 to 12 hours a week. And in some instances, it might be a full-time opportunity similar to an internship or a co-op where that's really the primary focus of what they're doing at that particular point in their education.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else want to talk about that? If not, can go into the next question.
I should say the nice thing about Boston is, depending on what you consider the greater Boston area, there's anywhere from like 34 to 42 or something like that institutions. And academia is a small subset. So I know we've had faculty who will connect students with other faculty who are doing a particular area of research that is more aligned with that student's research. So your faculty can really help you tap into that network of research as well. And so I think that's a neat thing to remember, is that faculty kind of get into niche areas. And so if a faculty isn't doing exactly what you're excited about, or you're getting excited to another area, they can often connect you with other schools or other faculty over the summer, things like that, to engage with that too. So.
Great. There's a great question in regards that touches on holistic admissions. With that, are there specific courses that you are all looking for students to take that are required or not required from their high school?
I'll start that. I think with regards to the classes that students take in their high school setting, the first thing that we need to do as admission officers and counselors is just be mindful that students at different schools are given different opportunities. So not every single student has the same academic opportunities and the same structure of classes from school to school. So the way I like to look at it is, we ask ourselves a sequence of questions as we work through an application. And one of those questions is, well, where do you go to high school? And given that, what can you do while you're at that school? What types of classes do you have access to? Are they international baccalaureate diploma classes? Are they AP courses? Are you preparing for A-level exams, or are they courses that are part of your national curriculum? So really kind of working through, what do you have access to first? And then the second part of that sequence would be, well, if you are at your school and you have an option as to the types of classes you can take, or you have an option in terms of what classes you register for, did you opt for rigor? And I think all four of our institutions are interested in students who opt for a more rigorous course load over the course of their time in high school. I would say with regards to BC, we do like to see students that have a variety of academic courses that range from mathematics to sciences to English to foreign languages to history and social science areas, but not every single student will have that same sequence for the time of their high school experience. So what do you have access to? Have you taken the most demanding courses that are available to you in your school, or have you taken the more rigorous coursework along the way? And then, given what the program is at your school, have you diversified your course load so it really represents a variety of different academic areas that will be applicable no matter where you go to school? That's just the way that we look at it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'd also just add that, in terms of, do we require any particular prerequisite courses that you take in high school for applying to any particular major? That really does vary from school to school. So that's something you should definitely talk to, an admissions officer about if you're interested in a particular major. Boston University, for example, we're quite flexible. We don't really have any firm prerequisite requirements, because we recognize that not all students have access to the same kind of curriculum. But for example, just using common sense, if you're applying to engineering, we're probably going to want to see calculus on your transcript, those kinds of things. But other than that, we don't have really any hard or fast high school class requirements for applying to any major.
Great. And kind of going into the actual attendance of the school, there's a question about how students can learn more about financial and scholarship opportunities to help them fund going to these great schools of yours.
Yes, I think you'll see it going around. We do have our financial aid policies listed on one of the slides. You can see what it differs for each school. There it is. So you can see the different options available. And I think that's something that's really important to ask every single school you're applying to. So are they doing need-based aid? Need-based meaning that it is based on your family's circumstances. So you're filling out paperwork. Then based on your family's income, they're supplying aid or not supplying aid. I would say for international students, that's a little less common. And then there's merit aid. So merit aid is based on your transcript, other parameters that the university sets up. And that is something that you're qualifying for based on that school's kind of set criteria. So I don't know if it's helpful for everyone just to go through and say what their policy is if you want to. So I'll say at Tufts, we don't do any merit-based aid. Our aid is all need-based. So it's all based on your family circumstances. And then we meet 100% demonstrated need for all students, regardless of citizenship. That means whatever the paperwork says you need is what you'll be provided for from Tufts. And as an international students are not provided with loans. It's purely grant, and that is money that doesn't need to be paid back. It's a very competitive process, but if you're admitted, we meet 100%.
The Boston College policy, first with regards to merit scholarship, we do have one merit program. It's called the Gabelli Presidential Scholarship. It's full tuition for 4 years. We award it to about 15 students in an incoming class of about 2,300. So it's extremely competitive. But with that, it's not based on citizenship or anything like that. No matter where you go to school, no matter what your background is, you can be eligible to be considered for the Gabelli program as long as you apply by the November 1st priority deadline for the scholarship. But with regard to need-based aid, Boston College will meet 100% of demonstrated need for those who are US citizens or permanent residents. But for those who are non-US citizens, Boston College requires that they pay full cost of attendance.
Yes, Boston University has a similar kind of setup to Boston College in that for US citizens and permanent residents, we do also meet now 100% of a student's financial or demonstrated financial need. For international students, foreign passport holders, we do have 2 merit scholarships that we offer. One is the trustee, which is the full tuition and fees. It's quite competitive. And one is the presidential, which is $25,000 per year. It's quite easy to apply. All you have to do is apply by December 1st and you are automatically considered for the presidential. If you want to apply for the trustee, we just require an additional supplemental essay. But other than that, those are definitely available to international students.
And Northeastern's policy, I would say, is more similar to Boston University and Boston College as well, in that we meet full demonstrated need for US citizens and permanent residents, but we're not able to offer that need-based aid to international students. We do have academic merit scholarships that any student who applies is automatically considered for. These range in value from about $10,000 to $25,000 per academic year, but they are highly competitive, and they're typically awarded to students in the top 10 to 15% of our admitted student group in terms of academics. But you don't have to do anything to be considered for those except apply to the university.
Great. Thank you. So I know a lot of these students are hearing the word test optional, and we're seeing it here on our slide as well. And so there's a question, and it's simply, what does test optional mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. What does test optional mean? I know that, students get really anxious, I think, when they hear test optional, because they're not exactly sure, does that mean that, it's preferred that students send testing in, or, am I better off if I send testing, or is it really okay not to submit tests? Am I at a disadvantage if I choose not to submit tests? And I think I can speak for everybody when I say that when we say test optional, we truly do mean that it is something optional that you can do, and that you are not at a disadvantage if you choose not to submit those test scores. If you submit test scores to us, we have to look at them and consider them as part of your academic profile. And so I think it's important to know kind of the averages, the SAT averages of each of the institutions that you're applying to. And I'd say if you're above that average mark, it's certainly not going to hurt your application if you submit, scores in the 1500 plus range, or, whatever the above average. But if you have scores that are maybe a little bit below that average, they may actually end up hurting your application a little bit, because we do have to look at them and consider them if you submit them to us. So my general rule of thumb is, if you have any question in your mind whether or not you want to send your scores, it's probably not going to be beneficial to send them. It's not going to put you at a disadvantage not to. So just apply with your solid academic program. Don't worry about the testing, and you will be fine. Anything to add?
I think sometimes it's helpful to think of like your application as like the pieces to a puzzle, right? So for some students, the vast majority of those pieces being their transcript and their rigor is the most helpful thing for them. They're a really strong student. They took really hard classes, all those things. For other students, maybe you switched to an IB program halfway through and had a little bit of a hard time, or maybe your parents moved countries and you struggled settling into a new country, or any of those things, or maybe you got sick one year, and if you want a little bit more of that puzzle to have an additional academic information, that's a chance to submit testing. So I totally echo what Samantha says about the averages can give you a good sense of kind of what other students are scoring. I think keep in mind that all of our averages are worldwide averages. They're not averages for Korea. They're not averages for Singapore, right? And so things like the verbal scores are also going to include a lot of native English speakers. So just keep that in mind. So sometimes students really worry about that. They see those scores. We're not expecting someone who's not a native speaker to score the same on a verbal score that we are for a US native speaker, right? So I think like everything we're talking about, and we've mentioned this a little bit with transcripts, context is really important. So the context you're coming from for the classes you're taking, the opportunities you have, but the same is true for testing. So testing does vary from region to region, things like that. And I think it's important to remember, even if you do submit testing, we're also aware now that students are probably only going to be able to take the test maybe once. A lot of our students previously would take it more than one time, and that helps with scores and things like that. So those scores will probably also be adjusted in the sense that students aren't able to take the test more than one time. So those averages from before might be a little out of context with the current normal. So I think those things are all important, but just remember your entire application is all these different parts of a puzzle, and it helps you to have the option to just highlight different things. So if that helps you conceptualize kind of the process at all.
That's great. So kind of in light of talking about us living in unprecedented times and things changing, there's a question about application dates for both regular and early. Are these dates going to change? And I will add in my own question in there. Where is the best place for students to go, or what is the best thing for them to do in order to stay abreast of changes that are taking place?
You can't say never anymore, because who knows? I would say it's probably unlikely for those dates to change, because those dates give us just enough time to review our application process. So the great thing about holistic admission is we get to know you as a person. The downside for us is it takes a lot of time. So we spend a lot of time going through your applications and reading your essays and seeing your interviews and all that stuff. And quite frankly, probably all of us on this panel, we're just finishing those decisions and getting them turned out to send out. So it would be highly unlikely that we'd be able to have the time to give you more time and still be able to get decisions out to students when we need to get them. So I would say highly unlikely, but it is a new time. And then the other part, which was, I'm forgetting now.
How do you get information?
Yes, this is really boring advice, but very, very follow it. Excel, you want an Excel document, because everyone's going to spend about an hour with us today, and you'll remember two things. And there's 4 schools here. There's so much information, and it varies school to school. And I know this is very boring to hear, but make an Excel document right away. We're telling you all this stuff right on these charts. Put in, do we have early action, early decision? Do they offer merit aid? Samantha, you need an extra essay for that really high level of merit. Like, put that stuff in now, so you're not constantly going back and learning this stuff. Lots of other schools are going to get in front of you and do presentations, and everyone has slightly different things, and it's going to save you a ton of time to have in Excel all the different things. Do they have the major you want? Do they have the club you want? Put that in there. And that's really going to help you get a sense of that. But really what you want to do is make sure you're on mailing lists. So all the schools are going to send you emails, send you updates, especially in this year where things are changing much more rapidly than any possible year. The best thing is to go to a school's website that you're interested in, sign up to get their information, and any potential change, deadline changes, any of that kind of stuff, they're going to get in front of you.
I just would like to add as well, another extremely important resource for you, and I agree with Bridget, get on our school mailing list, but also always keep an open line of communication with your college counselors at your school. Your college counselors are your best resource when it comes to talking through these types of policy changes, this type of situation that we're all finding ourselves in as we move forward. Your college counselors are your go-to people. Use that resource to the maximum at your school. Also keep in mind, when it comes to your college counseling community, we as university admission officers have an open line of communication with your college counselors as well, where we visit schools, we nurture relationships, and we're able to share information as well. So when we're talking about your best resource, both from a policy standpoint, but also from a counseling standpoint, it is the college counselors within your schools, and then of course turning to those of us who work at the universities if you'd like some university perspective as well.
Yeah, piggybacking on what David just said about college counselors, there are many college counselors on this webinar today, and college counselors have in the past asked admissions officers, thank you so much for going above and beyond what you all doing to help students during this time. What is something that college counselors can do so that they are supporting you for the next cycle?
I think one of the main things is really just keep open lines of communication with us and share updates about the things that are happening within their school communities, how they've been impacted. That gives all of us really valuable context in this process. We don't know what we don't know. So if you're able to include, some updates maybe on a school report about how, the current class of applicants maybe was impacted in any transition of their courses to being taught online, or really just any other information on a very broad level about how, the school community itself has responded, to the events of the last 3 months.
Great. How about there's to make it a little bit lighter, there's a question about just life in general, about residential life. You all talked about residing not only in Boston, but also your campuses. If you could speak to maybe each of you about what does life on campus look like outside the academic classrooms?
Oh man, that's a big question. There's a lot. I mean, we could go probably on for a long time, each of us, about what life looks like at our different schools. I think, at least at Boston University specifically, we are definitely a residential campus. The vast majority of our students do live on campus. Our campus is about a mile-long stretch of Commonwealth Avenue, of one street. And so it definitely has kind of like a homey feel. Even though you're right in the middle of the city, you definitely feel like you have a home. Like Boston University's campus is where you're at. There's a great sense of community. We have over 400 different extracurriculars that students can get involved in. Obviously, academics are going to take up, a big chunk of your time, but you certainly won't only be doing academics while you're a college student. You're going to make time for those extracurricular activities, for going out and exploring the city, finding cool new places to eat, finding places to take cool Instagram pictures with your friends. There's, a lot that you can do, as a BU student, as a college student, just in Boston in general. So I think it really varies for each student. Some students prefer to spend most of their time on their academics. Some students prefer a little bit more of a balance, and they want to carve out time to have those other fun experiences. But you'll definitely have the opportunity to do that. And your experience is what you make of it. So yeah.
I would say at Northeastern, it's definitely a very busy place, and students have very different experiences depending on what is going on in their education at that particular moment in time. Someone who is enrolled full-time in classes is going to have a very different lifestyle than someone who's on co-op and working a 9-to-5 job. Our students tend to thrive on this variety of experience, and they like all the activity and variety of day-to-day experiences that this brings, because you might have one group of friends who's in classes with you, while another group of friends is kind of exhausted from work by 7 p.m. It brings a really interesting kind of array of experiences to campus. And then I would just add, as Samantha mentions, there's a lot to do within the campus community itself, lots of different clubs and organizations and different ways to connect with the city.
Yeah, I agree. I think each one of our schools uses Boston and our own campus communities to develop the most dynamic living and learning experience possible. One thing that's interesting at BC as well, we have an interesting retreat culture where students are encouraged, they're not required to, but encouraged to explore opportunities to engage with students on campus, off campus, but in retreat settings. So one thing for first year students, for example, is a retreat called 48 Hours, where you and a cohort of maybe 35, 40 other students, some of them you may know, probably most of them you don't, will leave campus for 48 hours, go to a retreat center on Cape Cod or maybe in southern Maine or something like that. But you have questions about this transition to college. You're having open and vulnerable conversations about, what does it really feel like living in this residential community? Am I homesick? Because you know what, everybody is for the most part. How am I in terms of my adjustment, making friends or engaging in the academic culture? We see about half of our first year students engage in these types of retreats, and it just doesn't end there. There's a sequence of retreats that exists for all 4 years of your BC experience, but it's just something that provides another level for activity, another level for engagement, and I think another level to help students engage and acclimate to what the university experience is like. Every university has their own little, their own programming that helps students in that way.
Then Tufts has a couple of differences from my colleagues here because I think for the set out from the city, so we're a couple of T stops or public transportation stops out of the city where almost everyone else is kind of more in the city. So we definitely have a very much a residential center hub. You can kind of see very close to Boston, but kind of just outside of it in a smaller town, Somerville. About half our students will live on campus. The rest will live in the local area, all within about a 10-minute walk to campus. So really close there. We're the only school that's not Division I athletics. We're Division III. So we have 28 varsity sports. So a lot of our students are partaking in sports and athletics and kind of doing that, but also a really large culture of music and art and performance and things like that. I think Brendan really honestly said it really great. Every student's gonna have a different experience. Even if you had 100 kids on the same campus, some kids are going to engage in the city more, some are really good into the arts, some more into athletics, some more into publications and newspapers. I think that's the really cool thing in the US is that regardless of kind of the particular campus, there's room to kind of carve out your own space and your own interests, and that it's just kind of what the university offers to get engaged in. But no one student is going to have the same exact experience or pursue the same things as another student.
Makes me want to go to college again. There is a question about English requirements. So for the students that are listening today that are living in Korea or elsewhere, but they are US citizens, do they also have to take the TOEFL or other English language requirements? Yeah.
I think it's really going to depend on the individual school and their policy. Again, we probably sound, sort of like a broken record, but at Northeastern, for example, we identify, what do you say is your first language and the language you speak at home? This is really our primary point of reference for language fluency, because citizenship is not always a great indicator of an individual's first language or a language that they use with great frequency. So we look for what your first language is in the primary language, and we assign or don't assign our kind of requirements for demonstrating proficiency based on that and the context of your academic and personal background.
Yep, it's the same at Boston University. Citizenship is not really the main concern. We go off of what you claim as your first and your native language. And if it's not English, then we do strongly recommend taking TOEFL or IELTS exam scores to fulfill that requirement.
Is it the same at Tufts and BC as well? I'm assuming.
Yep.
Yeah.
Similar, yeah, there's some exemptions depending on what kind of school you go to, but yeah, similar.
So there's a lot of anxiety, as we all know, in regards to classes that are being conducted right now online and how that impacts GPA and how that will be translated in your respective offices in the fall. So how is that going to be handled?
I think it's important to remember we're all in the same boat. So all students are kind of, facing these challenges. And it goes back to kind of what we said is everything's contextual. So none of the schools represented here today have a chart and you hit the GPA and you're in, or you don't hit that GPA and you're out, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. And we're just touching on a couple of those things. You can see kind of the amount of time and attention that we get into your application. And so we're going to understand that it's challenging. And for some students, they're home, they have more family responsibilities, or they're helping take care of younger siblings, or they're sharing device availability or internet issues, or all of those things are challenging with time zones. We're really aware of all that. And I think it gets back to kind of what David and Brendan were saying earlier, maybe Brendan, about also hearing that from your counselor. So I think what's really helpful is when your counselor, if you've had particularly hard issues because of a family situation, or the area you live in has been particularly hard hit or whatever, the counselor can help communicate that in your counselor letter as part of your application. And that really helps us frame your particular experience within that context. So, at your same school, the student next to you might not be facing any of those issues. And then you might be really struggling given your family's actual situation. And that's really where the counselor can make a huge impact with letting us know what's going on with a particular student. So we say, yes, their GPA dropped this semester. However, they had to take care of a younger sibling. Their parents were essential workers and out of the home. They were taking on extra responsibilities. I think that's also why, it's very common to see students also in their activities list. We haven't talked about activities, but listing those outside responsibilities and things like that. Not every single thing is a club. We're just trying to get a sense of the demands on your time. Once again, to put all those other pieces in context. But essentially, everyone's going through challenges. We're not going to diminish or punish anyone for things outside of their control. And then the counselor can really help us see more if it goes to a different and deeper level of affecting your particular performance.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, you don't even necessarily have, definitely do talk to your counselors and have them include that information in their recommendation letter. But if there are some things that you feel more comfortable talking about yourself, or that you just, want to put your personal spin on it, there's also an additional information section on the Common Application, where a lot of students can also put that kind of just context of their own experience and what they thought and how it affected them. Totally agree that, taking care of your younger siblings counts as an extracurricular activity. Your grandparents, whatever it may be, we're here really just to listen to your story. And again, that's part of the whole holistic review. It's not just holistic in the sense of academic credentials, but also in the context of what has been going on for you during this time. And I think, all of us are here to hear your story and to, obviously we're assessing you for academic, for joining our universities, but also just to be a voice and to, make sure that you're heard and that we are getting your full story so that we can evaluate your application with as much context as possible.
Well, I think this is a wonderful place to kind of pause and wrap up our time together. There are some great questions that are still coming in, but unfortunately our time is coming to an end, but we will try our best to answer you offline. So please do continue to ask your questions if you have them. I think if I could speak on behalf of the admissions officers, I think this is a real, a trying time for everyone. And I think a time that where holistic admissions is truly the best way that they can assess your ability and your fit for their campuses, because every country is going through COVID-19 differently. Every family is facing difficult and different situations due to COVID-19. And so please be rest assured, if you can take away only one thing from this webinar, is that these admissions officers are human. They are on the other side going through this very human application where there will be putting everything into context. So just remember that you're not just a number of your GPA or your score. And so context is really key, and explaining this in your application, and your counselor is your, as David said earlier, your key person to navigate you and help you through this process. So having said all that, I just want to give our wonderful admissions officers just any final words before we hop off.
I'll just say, briefly, echoing all of what was just said in conclusion, we're going to look at the year ahead with the utmost sensitivity, flexibility, and understanding, knowing that each one of us is moving through this situation differently than the next. But yes, we are with you, we understand, and we can't wait to continue to build a relationship with you as we move through this process together.
Very well said. Totally agree. Thank you so much for tuning in today, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have more questions.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for spending the hour with us, and we hope everyone has a good evening. Bye.
Take care.